Tonight's story takes us inside the sterile white walls of a hospital, a place where life begins and too often, where it also ends. Hospitals are meant to heal, to protect, to save lives. But sometimes what lingers in their corridors is not the living. There are certain rooms staff refuse to enter, certain doors that stay closed without explanation. And if you've ever worked the night shift, it's not just the patients who keep you awake. This is the story of Room 1, a place where a tragedy refused to stay buried, where whispers echo through locked doors, and where one man discovered that sometimes the dead don't ask for help. They demand it. The first time I saw her, she was standing in the far corner of the operating room. But when I blinked, she was already lying on the table dead, though no one had ever touched her. I should start by saying I never believed in ghosts. Working in a hospital, you hear all kinds of stories. The whispers between nurses during night shifts, the jokes doctors made to keep themselves awake during 20-hour shifts, the way security guards swear they hear things moving in the empty wings of the building. Most of us brushed it off. Stress, fatigue, fluorescent lights buzzing too long overhead. But there are some nights you don't forget. Nights when the quiet is too sharp, too heavy, as if the air itself is waiting for something. Nights when the hospital seems to breathe with you in perfect rhythm until you realize it's not you, it's breathing with it all. That's what Room 1 was like. At St. Alden's Medical Center in North Carolina, Room 1 was just another operating room on paper. Clean, sterile, filled with the same instruments and overhead lights as the others. But if you asked anyone who'd been there long enough, they'd tell you to avoid it when you could, not that they'd say it outright. No one wanted to be the superstitious one. But watch the way people signed schedules, the subtle shuffling, the way surgeons traded favors to dodge Room 1. And you'd notice. I worked as a certified nursing assistant. Most of my job was routine, prepping rooms, assisting surgeons, wheeling patients in and out, keeping an eye on monitors. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it. I was reliable, calm, at least until that night. It was late, just past 3 in the morning. Emergency surgery was underway in Room 3, and I had been asked to stay behind at the desk outside the operating wing, monitoring the feeds from the CCTV cameras. The monitors were black and white, grainy things mounted on the wall. Each displayed one of the operating rooms, even the ones that weren't in use. Room 3 was alive with movement, shadows of surgeons bending over the table, the occasional flash of a scalpel, the shiver of an instrument being passed across. Rooms 2 and 4 were empty, the doors firmly shut, the beds sterile and untouched. But Room 1, that was when I saw her. At first, it was just movement in the corner of my eye, something faint on the grainy feed. A glitch, I thought. The monitors flickered sometimes. But when I turned to look, I froze. There was a figure standing in the corner of Room 1. Translucent, pale, almost the same gray as the static of the monitor. She wore something loose and shapeless, what looked like a hospital gown. Her head was bowed, dark hair spilling forward, her arms slack at her sides. I blinked. The figure was gone. I stared harder, leaning close until my breath fogged the glass. The corner of the room was empty now. The bed sat untouched. The instruments gleamed silently in the harsh overhead lights. I told myself I'd imagined it. Long night, tired eyes. I'd been staring at monitors too long. But then the alert chimed. But when I blinked, she was already lying on the table dead, though no one had ever touched her. The words blinked red on the screen. My heart thudded. Slowly, I looked back at the monitor. She was there again. This time, closer to the bed. My heart thudded. Slowly, I looked back at that was the beginning. At first, I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Instead, I kept watching. And the more I watched, the more I saw. She never moved normally. One second she'd be near the corner, the next she'd be standing directly beside the table. Once, I swear I saw her lying on it, her chest rising and falling as if she were alive. But the operating log said room 1 hadn't been used in days. No one was scheduled there. No one was allowed in. And yet, something was. The first time I stepped into room 1 after that, it was because of a technicality. Supplies had been stored in one of the cabinets, and the head nurse asked me to grab them. I tried not to hesitate. I didn't want to look suspicious. But the moment I pushed the door open, I knew. The air was different. Colder. Not just the regular chill of hospital AC. This sharp, biting, the kind that crawls up under your skin and lingers in your bones. My breath fogged, even though the thermostat outside the room read a steady 72. The overhead lights hummed. The bed gleamed under them, spotless, wrapped in crisp white sheets, but I swear the room felt used, like someone had just been there. The faintest smell of iron hung in the air, metallic and unpleasant, like blood left too long on steel. I grabbed the supplies as fast as I could, but just before I shut the cabinet, I heard it. A faint whisper. It wasn't a word I recognized. Not even a clear sound. Just a low hiss, like someone exhaling in my ear. I spun. The room was empty, but the cabinet door, it had swung shut on its own. That was just the first sign. Over the next few weeks, the whispers grew louder. Sometimes it was a sigh from the corner, other times a soft crying sound, muffled as though behind a wall. And always, it was in room 1. The others felt it too, even if they didn't say it out loud. Nurses left the room faster than they needed to, muttering excuses. Doctors avoided scheduling there unless there was no other choice. Even the janitorial staff whispered about lights flickering on at odd hours, instruments clattering to the floor when no one was inside. But the cameras didn't lie. And every time I was on night duty, I saw her, closer, clearer, like she wanted me to notice. The first time she moved, I nearly convinced myself it was just my eyes. The CCTV feed was grainy, the kind of picture that fuzzed at the edges if the lights inside were perfect. But when I glanced at the screen that night, the figure wasn't standing still like before. She tilted her head, not much, just enough for me to see the curve of her chin, the spill of dark hair shifting with the motion. It was so human, so alive, that I stumbled back from the monitors, chair legs squealing against the linoleum. My supervisor poked her head out of the nurse's station, frowning. "Russ, you all right?" "Yeah," I lied quickly, my throat dry. "Yeah, just thought I saw a spike on room 3's feed." False alarm. She didn't question it. Why would she? To her, room 1 was locked, empty, off limits. But I kept watching. That night, she turned her head 3 times. Once toward the door. Once toward the bed. Once directly into the camera. And when she did, the screen fuzzed with static. From that point, it became impossible to ignore. Every shift, there she was. Always in room 1, sometimes in the corner, sometimes by the bed. And every time she was facing a little closer to the lens, as though acknowledging me. I stopped telling myself it was my imagination. I knew what I saw. But I didn't tell anyone else, not yet. Because deep down, I was starting to wonder, was she only showing herself to me? The obsession started slowly. At home, I'd wake in the middle of the night, certain I heard the hiss of a monitor, the faint crackle of static from an old TV. Once, I stumbled into my living room, convinced I'd left something on. But the screen was black. The sound was coming from nowhere. I started having dreams, always the same. Room 1, bathed in that sterile white light. The bed gleaming, the faint drip of something hitting tile. And her, not standing this time, lying on the table, her chest rising and falling unnaturally, too fast, like a patient in distress. I'd stand frozen in the doorway as her head turned toward me. Her mouth would open wide, too wide, and she'd whisper something I could never quite make out. I'd wake drenched in sweat, my heart hammering like I'd run miles. I thought about requesting a transfer, but every time I tried to bring it up, the words stuck in my throat. It wasn't fear of being mocked anymore, it was something deeper. I couldn't leave. It sounds insane, I know. But the more I saw her, the more I felt pulled, like she was tethered to me. Or maybe I was tethered to her. I told myself I needed answers. So I started digging. The hospital's archives went back decades. Digital records were easier, but the deeper history was all in boxes, yellowed papers, typed notes, handwritten files that smelled of dust and mildew. I spent my breaks combing through them. At first, I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just something. Anything about room 1, and then I found it. A file from nearly 20 years ago. The patient's name was blacked out redacted, for reasons I couldn't guess. But the details were there. Female, mid-30s, complications during a C-section. She didn't survive. The child didn't either. The report noted unusual complications during surgery. Hemorrhaging that didn't respond to intervention. Cardiac arrest. Time of death. 3:07, exact same time I'd first seen her on the monitor. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I started to notice patterns. She always appeared between 2 and 4 emerging hours, as some of the older nurses jokingly called them. The colder the night, the clearer she was on the monitor. And every time she looked at the camera, the equipment glitched. Sometimes the feed crackled. Once, the whole monitor system rebooted itself, plunging me into sudden darkness before humming back to life. But the worst was the night I heard her voice. It was late, past 3 again. I was alone at the desk, the others busy with paperwork in the staff lounge. The monitors flickered quietly, the hum of the machines filling the silence. And then through the static I heard it, a whisper. Faint, broken, but undeniably real. Help me. The words crawled through the speaker so soft I almost doubted them, but then they came again. Help me. My skin prickled. My mouth went dry. I leaned closer, heart racing, eyes locked on the screen. She was standing right at the edge of the bed now, her head bowed, hair falling forward. Slowly, her face lifted, and for the first time, I saw her eyes. They were black. Not the dark brown of tired eyes, not shadow from poor camera quality, pure, endless black, swallowing the whites completely. And still, she whispered, "Help me." The monitor sparked. A sharp pop filled the room, and the feed cut out completely. When it returned, the room was empty. I should have run then. Quit, transferred, done anything to distance myself from that cursed room. But I didn't, because by then I wasn't just afraid. I was hooked. The next step was inevitable. I had to go back into room 1, but this time I wasn't going for supplies. I wasn't going because someone told me to. I was going because I needed to. It was 2 weeks after I found the file. My shift had ended, but I lingered. Waited until the corridors emptied, until the cleaners had passed through, until the building seemed half asleep. Then I unlocked the door. The air hit me like a wall freezing, metallic. My breath puffed white. The bed gleamed under the lights, untouched. Instruments lined the tray in perfect order, but I knew I wasn't alone. The whisper started before I'd even stepped all the way inside. Help me. This time it wasn't from the monitors. It was in the room, close. I froze. The whisper came again, more desperate. Please, help me. I forced myself forward, my shoes echoing on the tile. The sound was so wrong, too loud, too sharp, as though the walls themselves were listening. I reached the bed. The sheets were cold, damp almost, as though something had just lain there. And when I glanced at the steel tray beside me, my blood froze. The instruments were wrong. Not the usual gleaming scalpels and clamps. These were old, rusted, their edges blackened, jagged, stained with something dark that would never wash off. The whisper rose to a low wail. Help me. The lights flickered, and when they came back, she was lying on the bed. She was lying on the bed. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, each breath sharp and uneven, a fluttering panic like her lungs were fighting for air. Sweat soaked the thin hospital gown clinging to her skin. Strands of damp hair stuck to her forehead, her lips pale, trembling with weakness. But her eyes were still black, not dark, not shadowed black. The kind of black that seemed to pull at you if you stared too long, like falling into a tunnel with no end. For one awful moment, I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. My body screamed to run, to slam the door shut, and never look back. But instead, my legs carried me forward, step by step, closer, closer, until my hand hovered just inches above her arm. Help me, she whispered, lips barely moving. The sound was so fragile, I almost thought I imagined it. What do you want? My own voice cracked in the silence. What do you want from me? Her chest jerked with another breath. Her throat strained as though forcing words through something broken. They left me. The overhead lights flickered violently. Shadows split and twisted across the walls. I staggered back, shielding my eyes. When the brightness steadied, the bed was empty. I don't remember leaving the room. One moment I was staring at the empty sheets. The next I was halfway down the corridor, my breath ragged, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't even swipe my keycard to clock out. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw her, the rise and fall of her chest, the endless black eyes, the way her lips shaped words that barely reached me. They left me. What did that mean? Who left her? I buried myself in research. Old hospital death records, surgery logs, archived reports. I found fragments, the woman's procedure, her time of death, the stillborn child. But her name always redacted. Thick black marker covering every line as if she was being erased completely. And then, in the margins of a staff report, one note I hadn't seen before. Handwriting frantic, almost desperate, unusual complications during procedure. Surgeon insists instruments were not at fault. My skin crawled. What did that mean? The next night, I swore I wouldn't look at the monitors. I told myself I'd focus on paperwork, on room 3, on anything else. But just before 3:M, my eyes drifted. And there she was, not in the corner, not by the bed, but standing directly in front of the camera. Her face filled the screen, pale, lips cracked into a smile too wide, too wrong. Her mouth moved silently, her teeth too sharp in the glow. Then, for the first time, the audio wasn't static. It was a scream. Piercing, distorted, rattling the speakers until the glass shook. I slammed my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. Her scream cut through everything. Her mouth stretched impossibly wide, and from it spilled blackness, smoke, shadow, rot flooding the entire frame until the monitor went dark. When the feed flickered back, the room was empty again. But something had changed, because the scream hadn't just come through the speakers. It had come from down the hall. I wasn't the only one who heard it. 2 nurses burst from the lounge, wide-eyed, scanning the corridor. What the hell was that? One whispered. Sounded like the other froze, color draining. It came from room 1. Both of them turned toward me, and I realized they were waiting for me to move, waiting for me to answer. I should have told them no. Should have said we'd call security or let supervisors deal with it. But instead, my head nodded before I could stop it. I'll check it out. The door to room 1 was ajar. Light flickered like a dying pulse. I pushed it open. The bed gleamed under harsh fluorescent glow. Empty. The instruments sat neatly on the tray. But the air was wrong, colder than ever. My breath fogged instantly in the stillness. Then, slam. The door shut behind me, the lock clicking from the inside. My chest tightened. My hands shook at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. And then the whisper came again. Not faint, not fragile, but everywhere. Help me. Layered, overlapping, echoing from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. A chorus of agony pressing in from every direction. I stumbled back, crashing into the tray of instruments. Metal clattered across the tile, and then I saw her. Not on the bed, not in the corner, crawling across the floor. Her limbs bent wrong, jerking. The hospital gown dragged weightly behind her. Fingers scraped against the tiles, nails screeching as they left black marks in their wake. Her head snapped up. Those black eyes locked onto mine, and she laughed. The sound curdled my blood. She didn't question it. Why would she? To her, room 1 was locked, empty, off limits. But I kept watching. That night, she turned her head 3 times. Once toward the door. Once toward the bed. Once directly into the camera. And when she did, the screen fuzzed with static. I didn't tell anyone what really happened that night. How could I? The image of a woman crawling across the tiles, her eyes swallowed in blackness, it sounded insane, even to me. And yet I knew it was real. The scratches on the floor proved it. The echo of her laugh still rattled in my skull. But I couldn't escape her. Because after that night, she stopped waiting for me in room 1. She followed me everywhere. It started small. I'd walk down an empty hallway and swear I heard footsteps trailing just behind mine. I'd catch a reflection in the glass panel of a door, long hair spilling forward, a pale gown brushing the floor, but when I turned, the hall was empty. In the locker room, I'd open my locker only to gag at the metallic sting of iron, the sharp reek of blood burning my throat. My scrubs would be damp, cold, as if soaked in something I couldn't see. And the monitors, God, the monitors. No matter what feed I looked at, no matter which operating room or corridor, sometimes her face would appear, just for a split second. Too quick for anyone else to notice, but I saw her. I always saw her. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of her lying on the operating table, chest heaving, whispering the same words. They left me. But the dreams grew worse because in the later ones, she wasn't alone. Doctors surrounded her, their faces blurred, their hands stained. They worked frantically, passing instruments, barking orders. But it wasn't to save her, it was to hold her down. Her mouth open wide, screaming silently, her eyes locking onto mine as if begging me to see. And when I woke, my ears rang with the echo of her scream, though my apartment was silent. I started digging again. Not in the hospital archives this time, they had nothing more to give me. Instead, I went online. Old newspaper clippings, obituaries, forgotten forums. And that's when I found it. A thread about haunted hospitals of North Carolina. Buried halfway down the page, a single post. St. Alden's had a patient in the early 2000s. Woman died during section in War I. Family sued the hospital. Rumor is there were mistakes the surgeons covered up. They settled out of court. Whole thing hushed up. The user never posted again. No name, no details. But it was enough. Mistakes, cover up, they left me. After that, I couldn't unhear her voice. It was everywhere. In the hum of the fluorescent lights. In the hiss of the air vents. In the static of every monitor. Help me, please, they left me. The whispers clawed into my mind until I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming. And the worst part? Sometimes when she whispered, it wasn't just to me. Other staff began hearing it too. Nurses jolted in empty corridors, swearing they'd heard a woman crying. A doctor froze mid-step, pale, admitting he thought someone was begging for help from behind a locked door. Even janitors whispered about footsteps echoing behind them long after their shift ended. Room 1 wasn't just mine anymore. She was spreading. The breaking point came on a stormy night in October. Rain battered against the windows, thunder cracking until the lights flickered. I was on night duty again, alone with the monitors. At exactly 3:07 a.m., every feed cut to black. The screens buzzed with static, and then one by one, each lit up. Not with operating rooms, not with corridors, but with her face. 10 monitors, 10 identical feeds, all of her. Her black eyes bore into me from every angle. Her mouth opened, stretching impossibly wide. And this time, the sound wasn't a whisper. It was a shriek, high-pitched, bone-shaking, so loud the glass of the monitors trembled. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The sound wasn't just in the room, it was inside my head, drilling through my skull. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. My knees hit the tile, and still she screamed, until suddenly silence. The monitors went empty, all except one. Room 1. The door was open, and she was waiting inside. I don't remember standing, don't remember walking, but somehow I was at the door of room 1. My hand hovered over the handle, trembling. The whispers came again, softer this time. Please. Help me. I pushed the door open. The air was freezing. My breath fogged instantly. The bed sat under the harsh light, gleaming, and she was there. Lying on the table, chest rising and falling, lips trembling. For the first time, I forced myself forward. What do you want me to do? I whispered. My voice cracked. Tell me, please. Her black eyes locked onto mine. Her mouth moved, and this time I understood. Take my place. The lights exploded overhead. Sparks rained down. Instruments clattered to the floor. The bed shook violently as her body arched, convulsing, her mouth stretching wider and wider until her face seemed ready to split apart, and then darkness. When I woke, I was in the hospital bed. Room 1, the sheets cold beneath me, the overhead lights glaring down, and in the corner, she was standing, not lying anymore, not whispering, just watching, silent, her black eyes locked on me. I tried to scream, but no sound came, because my throat was filled with the taste of iron, and my chest rose and fell too quickly, too shallow, as if every breath was a struggle. They told me I collapsed at the monitors, that they found me unconscious, pale, barely breathing. They keep me here now, running tests, insisting it's exhaustion, stress, maybe even psychosis. But I know the truth. Because every time the nurses leave, every time the door clicks shut, and I'm alone in room 1 again, I hear her. Closer now. Always closer. Thank you. And when I catch my reflection in the steel of the instruments beside me, my eyes are black,